Welcome to Girl Read Your Bible, Sunday School for adults who missed it. I'm Nicole Waltz, your host for this podcast, brought to you by 522gals.com, a website dedicated to personal development and spiritual growth. Go and check it out, and please sign up for our email list. And we will email you whenever we have new podcasts, as well as some of the very exciting products we are working on that's going to help you specifically with personal development and spiritual growth. The thing that I am most excited about that we are working on for this upcoming year, 2026, is the Christian Women's Planner. And I have so much prepared for that, and I'm working on that. We are really excited about how I feel like this is really going to help each and every person to really become everything that they were created to be and really get a hold of growth, both in personally and spiritually. And I am so excited about everything that we're working on and that I feel like God is downloading me with, and I can't wait to share. And I want you to be in the know when that comes available. So please go to the website, 522gals.com, and sign up for our email list so that you will be notified of everything that we have going on and can help you with your growth. Things like this podcast. And without further ado, we want to dive into this week's episode, because this week we are talking about one of my most favorite stories in the Bible. Now, I know I say that like every week, but this one really does rank in the top 10. I couldn't wait to get to this story with you guys, because this is an incredible love story, and it's an incredible story of personal growth, development, and transformation. And there's so many good takeaways. So please make sure you listen to the entire episode so you get everything out of it, and then share this episode with a friend, because everything's better when we do it together. And because I know that you want to build your faith and community together, and you can help to encourage someone else. So please make sure to share this episode. Oh, and it would really be helpful if you could give us a rating on wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you can just subscribe and then rate the show, that actually really helps the algorithm know that people are even more engaged in listening, and it helps to push it out to other people. So that would really help this podcast grow and reach more people, which is the goal. So let's dive in today's episode of a true love story. Well, we're starting with the love story. We are starting in Genesis chapter 29. Today's Genesis 29 and 30. And we are still talking about the life of Jacob. And Jacob is a super important figure in history that we really need to know about his life and the struggles that he went through. And we can get a lot from the example that he set, both good and bad. So we can learn to avoid some pitfalls. So it's a great story, but it's also really important to know who he is, because he is a pivotal person in history. Very important, and I'll explain why as we go along. I want to recap a little bit of last episode. Make sure that you checked that one out. That will lead us to this one, because we're starting with Jacob on the run. Because last episode, which was so important because it's the power of your words, which also is, really a top favorite of mine, because the power of your words is so important. And that one really highlights that. So make sure you checked that one out if you haven't yet. And also to know where we're at just a little bit. Jacob has stolen his father's blessing from his brother, from his eldest brother. And his brother is mad. His father is nearing the end stages of life. And he is kind of waiting for Isaac to pass so that he's plotting in his heart to kill his brother. And Jacob's on the run because he knows this is not going to be good. His mom participated in that and was like, you got to get out of here. Go to where I'm from. Stay with my brother and find yourself a wife, because your brother is plotting to kill you. So it is a tumultuous time in his life. His father's passing, his family he had to leave behind. His brother is enraged, angry at him for what he has done. And so this is a really challenging time that we're coming into Jacob's story. And we have some good things that's going to happen in that time, and some difficult challenges, because friends, you will reap what you sow. And Jacob is about to learn that. So let's get started. We are reading together in Genesis chapter 29. And as always, I am going to read the names of these towns very horribly. I am very bad at pronunciation, but that's okay. These things can't stop us from reading the Bible. We just do the best we can with pronunciations and we move forward to the very valuable stuff. Then Jacob hurried on, finally arriving in the land of the east. And he saw a well in the distance. 3 flocks of sheep and goats lay in an open field beside it, waiting to be watered, but a heavy stone covered the mouth of the well. It was the custom there to wait for all the flocks to arrive before removing the stone and watering the animals. Afterward, the stone would be placed back on the mouth of the well. And Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked, "Where are you from, my friends?" "We are from Haran," they answered. "Do you know of a man named Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" He asked. "Yes, we do," they replied. "Is he doing well?" Jacob asked. "Yes, he's well," they answered. "Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the flock now." Oh, pay attention. Jacob said, "Look, it is still broad daylight and too early to round up the animals. Why don't you water your sheep and goats so that they can get back to pasture?" "We can't water the animals until all the flocks have arrived," they replied. Then the shepherds moved the stone from the mouth of the well, and we water all the sheep and goats. We all do it together. Jacob was still talking with them when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherd. And because Rachel was his cousin, and remember, friends, we married in family those days. That was A-okay. It was not like it is today. The daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and because the sheep and goats belonged to his uncle Laban, Jacob went over to the well, moved the stone from its mouth, and watered his uncle's flock. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. He's such an emotional guy. He explained to Rachel that he was her cousin on her father's side, the son of her aunt Rebekah. So Rachel quickly ran and told her father Laban. As soon as Laban heard that his nephew Jacob had arrived, he ran out to meet him, embraced him, kissed him, and brought him home. When Jacob had told him his story, Laban exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." Remember that, because Jacob just told him his story, which means he told him why he's fleeing. And his uncle, with some pride, I suspect, because he exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." He can see their similar characteristics through the story. Remember that this was not an especially good story because Jacob was a trickster. He'd done wrong. He'd stolen something from his brother. He was very deceitful in what he did. And Laban identified with it, and that's going to come up later. After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work with me without pay just because we are relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The oldest daughter was named Leah, and the youngest was named Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. I'm going to stop right there, friends, because we are reading from the New Living Translation, as I've told you that is my particular favorite. But I grew up with the King James Version. And so there's some scriptures, there's some differences in translation. And so where this says there is no sparkle in Leah's eye, in the King James Version, it says she was unfair to look upon. This is the Bible's way of calling you unattractive or ugly, which sounds so mean. But in any case, it's important that we understand how difficult life is for Leah, because she's going to be an important person in this stories that we're doing today. And her story is very significant as well. And how difficult must it be for a woman who, in the Bible, recorded for all time, read by millions of people throughout the ages, this poor woman is identified as unattractive. This is their way. I mean, this is a nice way of this. The New Living says it the nicest way. There was no sparkle in Leah's eye. wasn't just that she didn't have pretty eyes. She was not an attractive girl, which was extremely difficult because her younger sister was very attractive. She had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. That's a nice way of putting it because she was highly appealing. And so it's really important to see the contrast here. And we probably know some people like this in our lives, right? That some sister rivalry that have very different appearances, and that's a real struggle when family members have such distinct differences. And it can create competition. It can create low self-esteem issues. It can create all kinds of challenges, as if life isn't challenging enough to have a sibling who's considerably more than you in any which way. Better athlete, better whatever. But in this case, looks matter, especially in this day and time, because getting married was kind of the whole goal for women. So Leah being unfair to look upon or having no sparkle in her eye, that's quite a challenging thing to live with. But Rachel was lovely, and it hasn't told us yet. It's going to. But I want you to know that Rachel is the love of his life. It is love at first sight for him when she's appearing at the well, when she comes and brings her flocks and he runs up and kisses her. It didn't go into all the details that we'll get later in the story, but he's smitten from the door with this beautiful woman who happens to be what he was looking for, as far as she's part of his family line, and that's what he was looking for to marry. So he's feeling very blessed and favored of the Lord that he has run into Rachel, because she's beautiful and she's perfect and she's family approved as far as being able to marry her. She's from the right line, and so that's a huge blessing he's very excited about. And we'll keep reading. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, see, I told you, he told her father, "I'll work for you for 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. "I'd rather give her to you than anyone else. Stay and work for me." So Jacob worked for 7 years to pay for Rachel. But his love for her was so strong, it seemed to him but a few days. And I'm going to stop and we're going to harp on that, because this is why I'm telling you, there's not a whole lot of romantic stories in the Bible, but this one takes the cake for me. And we've got to talk about it because it also is showing us some things about Jacob. So let's dive into it. First of all, I did try looking it up so I could give you the right information. Why did Jacob say 7 years? Why didn't he say 1 year or 6 months or whatever the case may be? And I got some conflicting answers in my research that there's not a definitive reason for the number 7 years here. What I do want you to know and understand is that it would have been appropriate to have a bride price, to have a dowry that you would offer the father of the bride something in exchange for his daughter. That's the whole asking for your hand. You actually had to come with something to prove that you were going to be a provider in order to get married. So that would have been very normal and customary in that day. And while Jacob is set up to inherit great things and has this blessing spoken for him, right now he has nothing. So even though technically the birthright is his and technically the blessing is his, he doesn't have anything to his name with him, and he's on the run from his brother who's trying to kill him. So he has nothing financially to offer. He didn't come with a caravan of camels and sheep and his own supplies, his own wealth to this place. He's from the lineage that has that, and he's supposedly entitled to it, but right now there's a battle and a danger there, so he doesn't have anything to offer. So what we're seeing is that this 7 years perhaps would equate to the right financial amount of what he should be paying. Like I said, I got some conflicting info on where that 7 comes from, but it did rest or resonate, make sense to me that probably equated to what 7 times that wage would been to have been a fair price for the type of family that she was from and the oh, it sounds awful, the value they would assign to her because she is from a wealthy family as well, or well-to-do. They're not broke. They're not super rich. They're definitely not Abraham, but they're still maintaining. They're doing well. And that's going to all become very important as the story continues on, to understand that they are also doing well, but they're going to be very blessed by this arrangement and decision. Circling back, though, to the importance and something I love. I know it's just a few sentences, right? But we get so much reading between the lines of these sentences and how it's just like progressing the story forward. Jacob just offers right away, like he's in love with this girl so much that he's like, I'll work for you for 7 years if you give me her hand in marriage. This is Jacob. The Bible tells us in our previous, the last episode is in our previous reading, that Jacob was a mama's boy, that Jacob was, he more hung around the tents. Esau went out. He was like the manly one, and he went out and did the hunting and whatever. Jacob had a different type of personality. So the fact that he throws this out there and is willing to work for her for 7 years, that's the commitment he's signing from the door, shows some growth already in Jacob. He is ready to take on a very long time dedicated commitment for love, for this relationship that he wants to have. And that's already showing some personal growth in Jacob, that he would go from, this trickster who's kind of just hanging around with mama all the time, kind of it just is more of a creative type maybe. And he is going to commit to this long time labor contract in order to be with this woman. It's showing us the power of love and how it can inspire growth and change and commitment. It's showing, instead of this selfish ambition, he has this steadfast love. There's a lot to see here of that things, and this commitment that he is making, the 7-year commitment, is going to really help grow him. And so that's a big part of the central theme of what we're going to talk about today. So anyhow, picking up verse 19, we're circling back. Agreed, Laban says, I'd rather give her to you than anyone else. Stay and work with me. So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong it seemed but a few days. I know I already read that, but isn't that incredibly romantic? He worked for her for 7 years, but his love was so strong it felt but a few days. What a romantic, poetic line right there in our Bible. I'm going to highlight that one, because that, friends, is the kind of love you're looking for. That is the kind of man that we all want, right? It's very, very dedicated. His love is so strong it felt like only a few days. I can't even picture that. Finally, the time came for him to marry her. I have fulfilled my agreement, Jacob said to Laban. Now give me my wife so I can sleep with her. It's funny because you can't make this stuff up, friends. They were waiting. He was patient and waiting. So this mindset today that everyone's in a hurry and just jumps into bed and whatever. Jacob worked for her for 7 years. When that 7 years was up, though, he came. He was ready. I have been faithful. I have waited. I have been patient. I am in love, and I am ready to be married, and in the full sense of the word. And also, that was how the commencement ceremony was. It was it was not like weddings today. We didn't have the same types of ceremonies, but they did have long celebrations. So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night, when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob, and he slept with her. So there would be a bridal tent, and at the end of the wedding feast and celebration, and everyone's had a little too much to drink. Like, let's just be honest. That's what it's painting the picture for us. Because this is beyond crazy. What's happening here is that it wasn't a ceremony with the vows and the service like we see today. So there was this feast and there was this party. And at the end of the night, the woman would enter the tent where the man is, and they would have their relations, and that would be their covenant, and that's when they were officially married, which is why it was worded like that. So he actually gives Leah to Jacob. Now, mind you, Jacob he said, he was specific, and everyone knew. Come on, 7 years, these two have been mooning over each other. Like, it wouldn't have been a mystery. This is the ultimate trick. This is the ultimate proof of you will reap what you sow. Because remember that Jacob was a trickster, and he tricked his brother out of big things. And now a trick is being played on him that's frankly rather cruel, because he worked 7 years for the love of his life and instead is ending up with Leah, who, as we remember, friends, has no sparkle in her eye. Laban had given Leah a servant named Zilpah to be her maid. It's just letting you know, because Zilpah will come into the story later. It's a weird place to add that, but I didn't write it. But we're on verse 25. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah, he realized. "What have you done to me?" Jacob raged at Laban. "I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me?" And Laban responds, It's not our custom here to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn," Laban replied. Oh my gosh, he's calling him out. He's using the fact that he's technically like a foreigner. He's not from here. And he's like, well, like, you should have known this was what was going to happen, because that's not our custom here. I'm not going to marry off the younger daughter before the older daughter. That's not what we do here. You should have known. He's kind of throwing it back on him, but it's total deceit and deception. But he continues. But wait until the bridal week is over. This is where we get honeymoon from, friends. There would be a bridal week. Then we'll give you Rachel too, provided you promise to work for another 7 years for me. So Jacob agreed to work for 7 more years. But this time he was going to be with Rachel as well for those 7 years. So he would now have 2 wives, which again is not God's plan, friends, but happened a lot in the Bible. And it was normal for the culture, and God allowed it to happen. But we want to stick with what we know is true, that is not God's actual plan for marriage. Something that happened in the Old Testament is just something to know. That's the way it is. Anyhow, verse 29, Laban gave Rachel a servant, Bilhah, to be her maid. This is part of her being like a woman getting married, like they're having their servants assigned to them, what have you. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her much more than Leah, which we knew. He then stayed and worked for Laban the additional 7 years. So overall, he was so smitten with this woman that he agreed to stay with her family and work for them for 14 years. Friends, that is a different level of commitment. And even after being tricked and deceived, he wasn't just like, forget this, I'm over it. I'm not putting up with this family anymore. I mean, there's a lot of different ways this could have gone. Maybe old Jacob, who hadn't been maturing over this time, might have handled this differently. But he didn't. He was deeply in love, and it shapes and changes who he is. He's been patient. He's been faithful. He's showing integrity. I mean, he is changing and growing spiritually and personally. He is getting better character as he is working hard and keeping his promises and keeping his commitments. And at no point has he tried any trickery to make get what he wants, which is showing you a completely different Jacob than we saw in the previous chapters. And so this growth is something we really want to acknowledge. Why? Because I believe that people can grow and change. I believe that love helps change us, but that's not the reason, like we can't put that responsibility on another person. So don't hear me wrong about that. I'm saying it can change the way you feel and the person that you want to be because of your love for someone else. It changes your character because you want to be a better person for this other person or because of this other person. But obviously, I'm not putting that on Rachel because Rachel's got her own flaws. We will find that out as we keep going. She's got her own little challenges. In any case, my point is believing that people can grow and change and seeing that play out in people around us, in the scriptures, in history. It's just really powerful, I think, for us to acknowledge and realize that people can completely change who they are and become the better version of themselves, become what they were created to be. That's growth. We all have setbacks. We all have flaws. We've all made mistakes, but we don't have to identify with that as Jacob didn't spend his entire life identifying with that as I'm just a trickster. I'm a deceitful person. This is who I am. This is who I've always been, right? We're seeing this lie play out in culture and society in many areas where people get real quick about assigning their identity to their past mistakes. And Jacob could have done all of that, but he didn't. He allowed love to transform him. He allowed faith to transform him. He was no doubt over this time having many conversations with, I believe, having many conversations with the Lord and trying to consider the type of man he wants to be and to become. And he is working hard and showing that. Everything Jacob touches is blessed. We're going to see that more as we read more. But I'm going to talk about it ahead because we're here. And it's really valuable to see where people change and grow and what causes that, ignites that, causes that to shift for them. And for Jacob, I think it was finding this love and realizing he wanted to be a better man. And I think we got to give people credit for when they want to grow and change. We can't just always hold people up to the thing that we remember in the past. For ourselves and for the people around us. Give people room to grow and really believe that that can happen. And I think this story really speaks to me so strongly because it illustrates how a person can change into a much better version of themselves. Because Jacob's already being a much better version of himself. At no point has he tried any kind of trickery or deceit. And that speaks volumes to him becoming a very important historical figure in our Jewish and Christian heritage. So let's keep reading, because now we're going to talk about the kids. So when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, remember it said he loved Rachel much more than Leah. And so we can surmise that might have meant he spent a significant more time in Rachel's tent than Leah's tent. You know what I'm saying, girls, without me having to say it? When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. See, God saw the unfairness and the unbalance that was going on here, and he created a situation where he knew. So I think I've probably explained this to you before, but in case you haven't listened to any of those episodes, for the day and time in the culture, having a child was the whole point. It was the whole point for a woman. It was shameful not to be able to conceive. It was everything that you wanted was to be able to get married and provide a child, specifically a son, for your husband. That was like the whole goal. That was what you worked for, believed for, hoped for your entire life as a woman in that day. So it would be very significant and important for her to be able to have a child. And because Leah was able to have a child, then of course she would feel like that she would have now earned her husband's respect and love more so. Which, isn't technically the case. He still prefers Rachel because that's who he loves. So Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. And she named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me." Oh, friends, how difficult it was for Leah to feel so unloved. And, that's just, we know the pain of rejection and the pain of comparison. And she must have felt it her whole life, knowing that her sister was so beautiful and that she was less than attractive. And now finally she feels like she'll be seen. So she soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Simeon, for she said, "The Lord heard that I was unloved and has given me another son." So now she's at least getting this love of this pride of being the one who's bearing children, and this pride of having multiple children and being able to love them and be loved by them. Then she became pregnant a third time and gave birth to another son, and he was named Levi, for she said, "Surely this time my husband will feel affection for me, since I have given him 3 sons." And once again, Leah became pregnant and gave birth to another son, and she named him Judah, for she said, "Now I will praise the Lord." And then she stopped having children. I wonder if these names are sounding familiar to you, friends. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. These names should be sounding familiar to you for some reason, because they are significant names. We will get there. I'll talk to you about it. I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry. We're going over to chapter 30. That was the end of chapter 29. But the story is not taking a break here. When Rachel saw that she wasn't having any children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister, and she pleaded with Jacob, "Give me children or I will die." She's upset with her husband, like somehow he's doing something wrong. But then Jacob became furious with Rachel. "Am I God?" he asked. "He's the one who's kept you from having children." And then Rachel told him, "Take my maid Bilhah and sleep with her. She will bear children for me, and through her I can have a family too." Remember that Sarah also did the same thing with Hagar. I told you this is typical of the day for you to assign your servant and then claim her children as your own, as part of your family. It's confusing times, friend, but that's how it was. So that's what's happening here. So Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, and he slept with her. And Bilhah became pregnant and presented him with a son, and Rachel named him Dan. For she said, "God has vindicated me. He has heard my request and given me a son." Then Bilhah became pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son from her. And Rachel named him Naphtali, for she said, "I have struggled hard with my sister, and I'm winning." Kind of shows some character flaws in Rachel here, because first of all, Leah's up to 4 sons at this point. So I don't know about winning, but also that she's really the competitive one, which seems super unfair, right? And that's how life is sometimes. So I want you to think about this and consider, who are you more like in this story, Leah or Rachel? Because Leah genuinely is unloved and doesn't have the things that she most desires. And so she's been blessed, and she's incredibly grateful. She's grateful each and every time, and each and every child, and honoring the Lord and acknowledging that he has blessed her with this. Rachel is loved. Rachel is beautiful. Rachel seemingly has everything, but of course, not the thing that she thinks she wants or needs. And she's wearing it a little different, right? Rachel's wearing this one lack different. She's not showing the humility that I wish she was. She's got some personal growth she needs to do too. Because here she is having a second child, not really even from her own womb. This is from her maidservant. So it's like one hand off, and she's down up to 2 kids through this method, and now she's like, "I'm winning against my sister." She's created a competition where there isn't one. There's no competition between her and her sister. She's winning. She already is winning. She's loved. She's beautiful. She's got it all, and she's got this thing in her head where she isn't enough. I mean, consider these things, consider these real people and their challenges in this time. And how much are we like that? I know I have to do some self-examination of how much do we create a competition where there isn't one. Or Rachel's clearly very jealous of Leah, and she doesn't need to be jealous of Leah. Leah didn't have much. She finally gets some kids and feels like maybe now I'll be loved. And Rachel already has everything and is somehow creating competition instead. Oh, how much better would it be if Rachel would have just been loving and kind to her sister and been helping with the raising of her nephews, or this could play out completely differently. But instead, she's created competition and rivalry and misery in her own thoughts and caused herself grief when she didn't need to. She should have been pursuing good things from the Lord, but instead she was feeling competition she never needed to feel. She was going outside of really reality. She created her own reality thinking that there's a problem here when there wasn't one. I just wanted to, I don't know why I got off on that topic. I guess because I don't want us to do the same thing. I want to see these people's lives as an example, and also take away the good things and also take away the things of what not to do and how not to behave, because this is unnecessary. Meanwhile, Leah realized that she wasn't getting pregnant anymore, so she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife, and soon Zilpah presented him with a son, and Leah named him Gad, for she said, "How fortunate I am." Then Zilpah gave Jacob a second son, and Leah named him Asher, for she said, "What joy is mine! Now the other women will celebrate with me." She is still really craving that acceptance and love. And really, at this point, she has it. She's got lots of kids running around to be taken care of and responsible for. One day during the wheat harvest, Reuben had found some mandrakes growing in a field and brought them to his mother Leah. And Rachel begged Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But Leah angrily replied, "Isn't it enough you stole my husband? Now will you steal my son's mandrakes too?" Pause. We're mid-conversation, so I hate pausing here, but I have to tell you, this is clearly showing you how there's never been healing here, because Rachel and Leah Leah's still mentioning this, and there's been a ton of children born at this point, and Reuben's out collecting mandrakes, and so she's upset, like they're still bringing this up. I mean, I don't know how much time has passed at this exact moment, right? But we've got to figure it's at least 6-7 years, because all these children are being born. They're being born at least 9 months apart, probably 10, maybe more. I don't know exactly. And this is still coming up. This, "you stole my husband from me." It means we've gone a lot of years with a lot of bitterness, anger, and resentment taking root, and not healing and not moving forward and not playing nice or sharing. Like I told you, it is common in the day for a man to have multiple wives. So the fact that he was married to both Leah and Rachel is not actually as abnormal as, as it would be today, or as you would, wish, but they're just showing the rivalry and the hurt and the pain that's still here, that this is the immediate response. Rachel's like, "Hey, can I have some mandrakes? Those are delicious." And Leah immediately snaps, like, "You've already stolen my husband. Now you want my kids' mandrakes? Are you kidding?" They're fighting over like a food. Like it's clearly just showing how strong the resentment and the bitterness is among their family for a long time. For a long time. But as I said, mid-conversation, so I'm going to resume. Rachel answered, "I will let Jacob sleep with you tonight if you give me some of the mandrakes." This is again showing some strange character in Rachel. She really likes some mandrakes. I'd go to say those are her favorite food. So that evening, as Jacob was coming home from the field, Leah went out to meet him. "You must come and sleep with me tonight," she said. "I have paid for you with the mandrakes my son has found." So that night he slept with Leah, and God answered Leah's prayers, and she became pregnant again and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob, and she named him Ishkar, for she said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband as a wife. So she's pretty sure she's on the right track, but I'm not sure that's how that works. I'm just telling you what she said doesn't mean what she said is accurate. Know that, friends. This is recorded history. Doesn't mean this is all exactly what God wanted to happen or is factual. This is factual that is what she said. Not that God was in fact rewarding her for that behavior. I'm not sure that's how it plays out. We're on verse 19. Then Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a sixth son for Jacob, and she named him Zebulun. For she said, God has given me a good reward, and now my husband will treat me with respect, for I have given him 6 sons. Later she gave birth to a daughter named Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel's plight and answered her prayers by enabling her to have children. It doesn't tell us much of the backstory, friends, outside of this little mandrake exchange. And, we know that there's got to be some back and forth, because the only way for any of these gals to get pregnant is by having Jacob visit their tent. And I'm sure he had his preferences and who he'd like to choose. And there's all this turmoil and fighting going on. We can read between the lines. Not everything is written down here. We have to make some assumptions because a lot of time is passing. And this is something they're all dealing with every day. And so this is a time, Leah's up to having 6 kids, plus she's got the servant kids, plus, there's just all kinds of things happening here. And Rachel's has dug herself into probably quite a deep depression, maybe, because she is still not able to do the one thing that she really wants and is kind of required, to do, to provide a son from her womb. That's every woman's dream at this time. And really, it's a lot of women's dream, period. But at this time, it was so much more significant and important. And God remembered Rachel's plight. She's probably been pleading with him this entire time, and he has opened her womb and allowed her to conceive. And this is really important because her son is going to become one of my favorite historical figures of the Bible. So she became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has removed my disgrace. It's just showing how deeply she carrying that pain. And she named him Joseph. For she said, may the Lord add yet another son to my family. Again, we're seeing some of Rachel's character, though, where each and every time Leah is feeling, grateful. And Rachel's never quite getting there to the gratefulness. She kind of is, but it's like a half gratefulness. Like, thank goodness I have one. May I have another one? Like, take a minute to enjoy what you have. Learn some things from Rachel, who, while she's beautiful and Jacob is incredibly in love with her, she's got some character flaws. She could use some personal development for sure. In any case, soon after Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, please release me so I can go home to my own country, and let me take my wives and my children, for I have earned them by serving you, and let me be on my way. You certainly know how hard I have worked for you. Please listen to me, Laban replied. I have become wealthy, for the Lord has blessed me because of you. Tell me how much I owe you, and whatever it is, I'll pay it. And Jacob replied, you know how hard I've worked for you, and how your flocks and herds have grown under my care. You had little indeed before I came, but your wealth has increased enormously. The Lord has blessed you through everything I have done. But now, what about me? When can I start providing for my own family? What wages do you want? Laban asked again. And Jacob replied, don't give me anything. Just do this one thing, and I'll continue to tend and watch over your flocks. Let me inspect your flocks today and remove all the sheep and goats that are speckled or spotted, along with any black sheep. Give these to me as my wages. In the future, when you check on the animals, you have given me as my wages, you will see that I have been honest. If you find in my flock any goats without speckles or spots, or any sheep that are not black, you will know that I have stolen from you. So see, he's taking, these would be considered like the less than, because they have flaws. They're not perfectly, they have spots, speckles, black sheep. No, these are he's asking for the flawed animals in the herds. And he's saying, give me that as my wages. I'll take that. And that's pretty gracious of Jacob, who totally knows that because of the blessing that he has under the Lord through his father. Remember, he was very deceitful to try to steal that blessing. He knows the power of it, and he knew that God would bless him, and God in fact has. And that blessing has affected Laban. Friends, we need to know this. We need to know this, because Laban is the person he's working for. Laban is the person he's in his life. And Laban's not such a good guy, to be honest. We'll see that revealing itself more and more as we go. But he's being blessed anyhow, not because of anything that he's done, but because he has surrounded himself by someone who is in fact blessed by God. And he was smart enough to put that person in charge of things so that he would be blessed in return. So his blessing is not coming from his own actions. His blessing is coming from who he's surrounding himself with, being Jacob. That's important, because we carry that favor of God. When we activate it, we carry that favor of God. And so people around us should be being blessed as a result. But also be aware and pay attention to the people that you're surrounding your circle with, whether it's if you're a boss in charge of things, if you're whoever your friend circle is, whoever you're letting speak into and pour into your life. You will be blessed if it's people who are under the favor and covering of the Lord, just as Laban was blessed by Jacob. So it's important to align yourself with people and to watch out for people who are not aligned with the favor and blessing of the Lord, because then some bad, shady stuff can happen, which is the example we're going to see here from Laban. All right, Laban replied, it will be as you say. But that very day Laban went out and removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, and the female goats that had speckles. And I'm going to summarize, because this is a lot of back and forth. So he's going to go out and take them all and send them off with his sons. So then when Jacob goes out to go look for his sheep, his goats, his herd, whatever, they're gone. They've already been taken. So again, Laban, no personal development, no spiritual growth, because he just agreed to this with Jacob. And now he's again being tricky. And he was tricky years and years ago with the whole Rachel and Leah thing. And so he hasn't changed at all or learned anything from it's so bizarre to me that he's seeing how God is blessing Jacob and seeing how he is blessed as a result. And he at no point is turning to God, because, and we know this because later he's going to have a whole thing about his idols, and it's going to be, we'll get to it. But I'm just telling you, we do know, if you read ahead, it'll help. But we do know that Laban has not identified with the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob as his God. And even though he's seeing, I want to say, the benefit of that, the reward of that, he's still making weird choices to follow idols and to be deceitful and to be tricky. And it's going to cause a problem, as we know. That's where we'll always see that in history. So then Jacob takes some fresh branches from poplar, almond, and some trees, and this is interesting to me because I don't know anything about raising sheep and goats and things, but he's going to take some branches and he's going to put it in their water, and he's going to have them drink it, and that's going to make them like turn their coats colors too. So I guess if you're a smart shepherd paying attention, you realize the things that's going to affect your sheep. Friends, we could do a whole thing about this. I don't know. I'd have to do a ton of research. But what you're putting into your body will affect your body. This is even true for the animals, because he's going to do this whole shady thing where he's going to make all these animals turn into streaks and spots and have flaws and blemishes because of what they're consuming. And we know that that's true. The importance of what's in our food. I'm not even going to get off on, go off on that topic, because that is too deep and not what we're talking about here today. But we do know that what we put into our bodies affects our bodies. And this has always been true, and they've always known that, even in how they cared for their animals. Because Jacob goes immediately to do this, which tells me he knew this. Like, he knew that this would have a cause and effect. And so he totally identified the trickery, and he's like, fine, I'm going to earn my herd back because this is what you promised me. And we had a deal. And so I'll make sure all these sheep have speckles and are flawed in their appearance, because then they'll all be mine. And so that's Jacob being it. I would say I feel differently about this one, though. Like, I don't feel like he's being tricky about this one. I feel like he was tricked, and now he's using wisdom. And this one hits me a little different, where I don't feel like this is old Jacob rearing his head being deceptive. I feel like he's being responsive to the deceit in front of him, and that this is actually a show of wisdom, and that he could have made a lot of other tricky choices along the way and has repeatedly chosen to show integrity. And so even in this, where this isn't like the most integrity, what's the alternative here? That I'm just going to sit around and wait for another couple years for these herds to grow and develop and wait for the next round? He's like, no, we had a deal, you went back on it, but I'm going to make you make good on it. I'm going to make it come to fruition, because I know how to make sure that these animals become what we promised, with the flaws in their appearance or whatever. I don't know anything about how to make goats and things have speckles, but apparently the secret is right here in the Bible. So if you're raising goats, please reach out to me. I want to know if this is something we can still do today. I want to know if this is an experiment that you have tried, or if this is some sort of like miraculous thing, or if this is like a known thing among people who raise these types of animals, sheep and goats and whatever. I'm so curious, because it's just like in there as if everyone would know. Sometimes we find things like that in the Bible, things that they just knew in those days that just made sense to them, that I'm like, well, I don't know anything about farming, so I always got to go and look stuff up. In any case, Jacob has come up with this solution and used the wisdom that he has gained in caring for these animals over this time to make Laban honor his deal. He is making him honor it. So I'm not seeing a trickster here. I'm actually seeing some wisdom and integrity, and I'm actually really proud of Jacob for this path, or this the way that he's handling this. So you can read all about the details. I'm not going to read it with you. I want you to read this one for yourself, girls, if you're so interested. It's from chapter 30, verse 37, all the way to the end of the chapter. And it's just talking about how he set it up with this watering trough and these branches, and then they made it in front of him, and he took the weaker ones and didn't do that with them, but did it with the stronger ones so that his herd would be stronger. And so in this way, he was able to build his herd and his wealth, because he spent the last roughly 20 years taking care and building his uncle's wealth, but not his own families. And so he knows it's his time. So I feel like he's showing us a lot of growth and a lot of wisdom, and he's still being pretty wise. And shrewd is actually, I guess, the correct word that I'm perhaps looking for. And the Bible tells us to be shrewd and to be knowledgeable and to use wisdom. That's not showing a lack of integrity. It's showing like he was cheated and he's figuring out a way to make it right. And so I think there's some good takeaway there. I think the story of Jacob and Rachel and Leah has a lot of really good takeaways for us. I think we can see the growth in Jacob as he's matured. He shows integrity and faith and patience. He's being a man in love. He's got this family he's got to provide for now. I think we're up to 11 sons and a daughter at this point. I think we got through 11 of this. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we read off all 11. So his family has grown exponentially. That's a lot of mouths to feed and take care of. And he's doing right by the people around him. And he's trying to balance a lot of wives at this point, which, like I said, friends, isn't a good idea, but was customary in those times. So I think we've seen a tremendous amount of growth for this person that's going to be a really important and vital person in history. And I'll just tell you, like, spoiler alert, because you should be reading your Bible yourself and look ahead. Jacob is such an important person because later down the road, Jacob is going to have a vision from God. He's going to wrestle with an angel, and the Lord is going to change his name to Israel. Jacob is such an important person here because he is the one who is why they're called Israelites. It's why the nation is called Israel today, because God is going to change his name, just like he changed Abram's to Abraham, which wasn't like a huge difference in the name. There's like a little changing of some vowels here, but with Jacob, it's a huge change. He's going to change his name from Jacob to Israel, and from him and his children will be all of the Israelite nations. We have named off through this reading today 11 of the children. There will be 12, and these will be the 12 tribes of Israel, and that is really important for our history and knowing where all these come from. We talk about the tribe of Judah, and the Levites come from Levi. And so there's a lot of history forming and developing and becoming right here in these chapters. And that's why it's important to know this stuff and to understand where this all comes from and who these key players are and their stories and the ways that they have developed and grown. And I think it's just so valuable for me to see the transformation in Jacob, to see the real challenges and struggles of these important figures in history, to see the real challenges and struggles that we can relate to with Leah and Rachel having their own struggles. And they're from this wealthy family and they have all these good things going on, and yet they're still having their challenges. And I think we can just identify and relate and take so much away. I think that we can see how God shows up for them in their pain, and that reminds us that he'll show up for us. There's so much to get out of these people's stories, and I really hope that you enjoyed getting this love story, love triangle that turns into like love pentagon. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people getting involved in this love story and the growth of this family that is a key family in the heritage that we all come from, that we all need to know about. This is the Jewish people, and Jesus will come from this, and we all are blessed because of Jesus. And so that's when God says to Abraham, all of the nations of the world will be blessed through your line. He's pointing directly to the Messiah, which is Jesus, which comes from this line. And later, as we're reading the Bible, they'll often say that they serve I serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's how it's always Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so that's why we're covering these I want to say, I hate the word characters because, I don't want you to ever consider them any kind of fiction. These are real people that had real struggles, that really lived, and that we can learn a lot from. And they were flawed, like we are flawed, and still considered, heroic people, and still have really meaningful stories that were so valuable that they made it into the Bible, something that has stood the test of time and been read by millions. And I think that's an incredible feat, and that we should be able to learn a lot from their lives. So I just want you to think on these people and their stories. I want you to read this for yourself. That was Genesis 20, chapter 29 and chapter 30, and see what God's sharing to you in your heart of how their stories impact your life and who you can most relate to, and how it can help you grow and identify, that growth is and change is incredibly possible. You are not locked in to the character of your past mistakes. You can become the person that God created you to be, with incredible patience and faith and integrity, just like we're seeing Jacob grow. And he's going to continue on a growth journey and a spiritual awakening, and we will get into that next time. But until then, girl, read your Bible.